I always thought I had the perfect marriage. For years, I dedicated myself to being the best husband I could be, hardworking, reliable, and, above all, loving. I made sure my wife had everything she wanted, a beautiful home, financial security, and the kind of life she used to dream about. In return, all I ever asked for was loyalty and love. And for a long time, I believed I had it. Our marriage had its routines, like any long-term relationship does, but it felt steady, comfortable. I trusted her completely. We had our ups and downs, but I never once thought that trust would be shattered. Yet, over the past few months, I started noticing things. Small things at first, nothing I could put my finger on. She became more distant, as if her mind was somewhere else. Conversations grew shorter, her laughter less frequent, and when I asked if something was wrong, she'd brush it off, saying she was just tired from work. Her phone, once left carelessly around the house, became glued to her side. She'd get texts at odd hours and would smile, a kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in quite some time. When I asked about it, she'd wave it away, claiming it was just work stuff. And then there was the colleague. She started talking about him more often, a guy from her office, someone she worked closely with. At first, it didn't bother me. I thought nothing of it. After all, people have friends at work, right? But then she started staying late more often, saying she had meetings or projects to finish, and somehow, his name always came up in the conversation. That's when the doubts crept in. But instead of confronting her, I chose to play my part. The part of the oblivious, inattentive husband, the one too wrapped up in his own world to notice his wife slipping away. I decided to wait, to watch, and to let her believe that I was still the man who never noticed when things were out of place. Little did she know, I was paying attention to everything. It was a regular Saturday afternoon when I first stumbled upon the truth. I wasn't looking for anything, just sorting through some bills, trying to get a handle on our finances. The usual, utilities, groceries, the mortgage. But then, I noticed a few charges that didn't make sense. A high-end restaurant receipt, but I couldn't recall the last time we'd dined out together. A gift shop purchase, even though there hadn't been any birthdays or anniversaries recently. And then, travel expenses, weekend getaways I wasn't invited to. My heart sank, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. I spent the next few days gathering more evidence, quietly investigating without raising any alarms. I scrolled through our shared credit card statement and found more: luxury hotel stays, two-person dinners, and, once, a receipt for an expensive bracelet that I had never seen her wear. Each discovery was like a punch to the gut, but I knew better than to act impulsively. If I was going to confront her, I needed to do it on my terms, when she least expected it. It wasn't long before I confirmed what I had feared all along: she was having an affair with her colleague, the same man she had been casually slipping into our conversations. The pieces fit together perfectly now: the late nights at work, the secret smiles at her phone, the extra care she suddenly put into her appearance before heading out the door. Rage simmered inside me, but I kept it bottled up. I knew that storming in and confronting her would be satisfying in the moment, but it wouldn't give me the justice I craved. No, I needed to plan something bigger, something she'd never see coming. So I played my part, the role of the clueless husband, too wrapped up in his own life to notice his wife betraying him right under his nose. I smiled when she told me she'd be working late again, kissed her goodbye when she left for work trips, and acted like everything was just fine. All the while, I was meticulously planning my revenge. Every time I looked at her, pretending not to know the truth, I felt my resolve harden. She thought she was so clever, so untouchable. But what she didn't realize was that I had the upper hand now. She was still playing her game, but I had already moved on to the final act. And it was going to be spectacular. As our anniversary approached, I knew the time had come. It was the perfect opportunity to execute my plan, one that would expose her betrayal in the most devastating, public way possible. I suggested we celebrate with a grand dinner, something special to mark our years together. I could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes, followed by relief. In her mind, I was still the clueless, inattentive husband, none the wiser to her double life. "Oh, and why don't we invite your colleague?" I suggested, trying to keep my voice casual. "You know, the one you're always working with. He's practically part of the family by now." For a split second, I saw her hesitation, her eyes darting to the side, her mind racing. But she quickly masked it with a smile, clearly believing she had me wrapped around her finger. "That's a great idea," she said, her voice light and sweet, as if the thought of having her lover at our anniversary dinner didn't make her blood run cold. She thought she was in control, that I was still oblivious, just as she'd hoped. Over the next few days, I poured myself into planning. I made reservations at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, ensuring everything would be perfect, the finest wine, the most exquisite courses, and of course, a private dining room. I left nothing to chance. While she busied herself with picking out a new dress for the evening, I made my own preparations. I didn't just want to confront her, I wanted to obliterate the fantasy she had created. My plan was simple but precise. During the dinner, we would make a heartfelt speech about love, loyalty, and trust. And then, when she and her lover were most comfortable, thinking they'd pulled the wool over my eyes, I would drop the bomb. The night finally arrived. She walked into the restaurant beaming, dressed in a stunning red gown that once would have taken my breath away. Now, all I could see was the deception behind her smile. Her lover, that smug bastard, followed close behind, clearly amused by the charade we were all part of. They both sat across from me, sipping on wine, exchanging glances they thought I wouldn't notice. Little did they know, I had orchestrated every detail of this moment. My heart raced, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. The stage was set, and I was ready to bring down the curtain. The dinner was everything I had planned. The wine flowed, the conversation started lightly, and the atmosphere in the room was warm, even intimate. My wife sat across from me, her lover just beside her, and they exchanged subtle glances, thinking they were invisible. I played my part, smiling, pretending I was none the wiser. But inside, I could feel the moment building, like a storm about to break. As the main course was cleared, I raised my glass. "I'd like to say a few words," I began, my voice calm but deliberate. Both my wife and her lover turned their attention to me, the room suddenly quieter. I could see the hint of nervousness in her eyes as I stood, glass in hand, to address them. "I want to talk about loyalty," I said, my voice steady. "About trust and what it means in a marriage. You know, when we got married, I made a vow. A vow to always be there, to love you, to support you, no matter what. And in return, I believed you made the same promise to me." I saw her shift uncomfortably in her seat. Her eyes darted to her lover, who remained composed, unaware of what was coming next. "The thing about trust," I continued, "is that it's the foundation of any relationship. Without it, everything crumbles. But trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. And that's what I've come to realize over the last few months." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Her face went pale. She glanced at me, then at him, and back at me again, confusion starting to flicker in her eyes. She knew something was off, but she wasn't sure just how deep the cut was going to be. "You see," I said, my voice softening, almost as if I was confiding a secret I've known for a while now. "About the late nights. The phone calls. The trips. The dinners. The gifts." I looked directly at her, and then shifted my gaze to her lover, who now had the look of someone trying to piece together the puzzle too late. "I know everything." The silence that followed was deafening. My wife's face froze, her eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Her lover, on the other hand, looked like someone who had just been slapped in the face with cold reality. The color drained from both their faces as the full weight of my words sank in. For months, I let you both think I was blind, distracted, too caught up in my own world to notice. But I noticed everything, I said, my voice harder now. I've watched, I've listened, and I've waited. The room was now deadly quiet. Other tables had turned their heads, sensing something dramatic was unfolding. I leaned forward slightly, looking my wife dead in the eyes. I invited him tonight because I wanted you both to feel comfortable. To feel like you'd gotten away with it. But now, here we are, on our anniversary of all days, and it's time you both understand just how far you've fallen. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her lover remained silent, gripping the edge of the table as if steadying himself. And don't worry, I added, my voice dripping with irony. I've already made arrangements for a divorce. I'll be walking away with what's mine, everything I worked for. You can have each other, and the shame that comes with it. I took a long, slow sip of my wine, savoring the moment as I watched their world collapse. The silence at the table was suffocating. My wife, pale and wide-eyed, tried to form words, her lips moving but no sound coming out. Her lover sat stiff, his face blank as he processed the crushing weight of the truth. I didn't give them a chance to regain control of the situation. With a calmness that seemed to drain the remaining color from her face, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the documents I had been waiting to reveal, the divorce papers. Before you say anything, I began, my voice as steady as my hand, I want you to know that I've already spoken to a lawyer. Everything is settled. I'll be keeping most of what we built together, since, I was the one who actually built it. I placed the papers on the table in front of her, watching her eyes widen as she realized what was happening. The prenup, the asset divisions, the bank accounts, all in my favor. She had no idea how thoroughly I had prepared for this moment. The look of desperation on her face was almost pitiful, but I felt no sympathy. She had gambled everything, our marriage, our life together, on the assumption that I was too blind to see her deceit. But now, she was staring at the cold reality. I had played her at her own game and won. I've moved out of the house, I continued, feeling a surge of satisfaction as her lover shifted awkwardly in his seat. You can have it, though you might want to figure out how you'll pay for it without me. Her face crumpled as the realization hit her. Without my income, the life she had grown accustomed to was slipping through her fingers. I stood up from the table, brushing off my jacket as if I were brushing away the remnants of a bad memory. Oh, and one last thing, I said, leaning in slightly. I've already notified your family and our friends about why this is happening. I figured they deserved to know the truth, too. Her eyes darted around the restaurant as if she suddenly realized that the onlookers were all part of the spectacle she had unknowingly walked into. Whispers had started to circulate around the room, and I could see the panic rising in her. There was nothing left to say. The power I once felt she had over me was gone, replaced by the clarity of my own victory. I looked at her one last time, feeling nothing but a cold satisfaction as I said, "Enjoy the rest of your evening." With that, I walked away from the lies, the betrayal, and the sham of a marriage I had been trapped in. I could feel the weight lift off my shoulders with every step I took. I wasn't just walking out of that restaurant, I was walking away from a life of deception and walking straight into my own freedom. As I stepped into the night air, I couldn't help but reflect on the events that had led to this moment. She had thought I was blind, that I would never see her betrayal. But patience is a powerful thing. I had waited, planned, and delivered my revenge with precision. And now, I was free, with a fortune in my pocket and my dignity intact. Revenge, I realized, is best served cold. And in the end, the one who plays the long game always walks away victorious. As I walked away from that restaurant, leaving behind not just a cheating wife but all the pain and deceit she brought into my life, one thing became clear: never underestimate someone who seems like they aren't paying attention. Sometimes, silence is just the preparation for the final blow. I walked out with my head held high, my assets secured, and a new life ahead of me. She, on the other hand, was left to deal with the consequences of her choices. In the end, the betrayal didn't just break our marriage, it shattered the life she thought she had under control. Revenge, my friends, is a dish best served cold. And now, it was finally time to move on. If you liked this story and want to hear more tales of men who, like me, rose after betrayal and came out on top, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Only stories about men. Here, stories of revenge and redemption are told raw and real. See you next time.